A name so feared that entire armies would dissolve before battle even began. Varvatos, the strongest demon lord to ever walk this earth. A one-man apocalypse, a living disaster in human skin. Every dark force in existence knew one truth. You do not stand in front of this man. And yet, he died. Tragically, stupidly, like an absolute clown. But death wasn't even the worst part. The worst part? The girl, his best friend, the one person he never got to tell the truth, gone before a single word could leave his mouth. That wound didn't heal. It rotted. It ate through every corner of his soul until there was nothing left but silence and regret. So when reincarnation knocked on his door, Varvados made one decision. This time I disappear. I become nobody. I live quietly and I die quietly, and nobody ever knows my name. He came back as Ard Meteor small village. Loving family. Zero drama. That was the plan. The problem? His powers didn't get the memo. Every ounce of his demon lord strength came back with him, fully intact, fully loaded, and fully ready to ruin his plan from day one. This man wanted to be a background character. Instead, he was born as a walking cheat code wearing a child's face. The only thing that didn't come back, social skills. Those were gone permanently, like they never existed in the first place. Part 2. 10 years of grinding. Zero friends. 10 years passed. 10 years. During which Art did what any completely normal, well adjusted child would do. He grinded magic and martial arts from sunrise to sunset every single day without stopping, like he had a leaderboard to top. And when his 10th birthday came around, surrounded by his family, candles glowing, celebration in the air, the realization hit him like a wall. He had not a single friend. Not one. Outside, he could hear kids laughing, running, calling each other's names. Living. And this man, this legendary demon lord reborn, stood at his window listening to children play like it was the saddest thing in the world. He opened the door, walked outside, looked at those kids, and screamed at them to be his friends. They ran instantly, like he'd announced a fire drill. Did he stop? No. He spotted 3 girls nearby, tried to approach. His anxiety detonated mid walk. His legs gave out. He folded to the ground like a broken umbrella. The girls stared at this kid collapsed on the road. Then they ran too. Art dragged himself upright and called after them. Said something about being a man of culture. Mentioned wanting to develop plot. One girl turned back and called him disgusting. Curtain close. A few minutes later, an entire forest exploded. Ard went home and counted his losses. Part 3. The mayor's advice and the girl in the storm mayor. Al-Hidi, a kind man who clearly had no idea what he was dealing with, offered simple advice. Just be kind. Respect women. Ard absorbed this like gospel. Then, from the direction of the forest, a scream. He moved. What he found stopped him cold. A silver-haired girl, standing over the wreckage of a giant wolf that had been peaceful just hours ago. Lightning crackled around her fingers. The wolf was gone, not injured. Gone, vaporized like it had offended the sky itself. She turned and found Art staring. He opened his mouth. He had one shot, one sentence to make a first impression. He complimented her chest. She stared. He panicked and course-corrected by calling her flat. She continued staring. And somehow, through all of that, he asked her to be his friend. She paused. Something flickered behind her eyes. She opened her mouth. We could never understand each other. And she walked away. Art stood in the middle of the forest, alone, staring at nothing. But somewhere in that disaster, something had cracked open just slightly. Something that felt, against all logic, like possibility. Part 4. Weeks of chaos, one birthday, and full creep mode unlocked. He didn't stop. For weeks, Art chased Ireena through the village like a man possessed. Every time she saw him coming, she turned and ran. Every time he found her, she disappeared again. The cycle was relentless. One night, he found her casually electrocuting a bear in the forest. He decided to walk her home. She ran. He followed and began comparing her to the moon, then explained the comparison in extensive detail. She escaped while he was still mid metaphor. He went home and tried writing poems, then songs. Both failed, just like last time. Consistency, at least. Then came her birthday. Ard showed up with flowers. He had a speech prepared. He was going to do this right. He gave her the flowers, then revealed he knew her birthday, her habits, her history, details he absolutely should not have known. Ireena looked at the flowers. Then she burned them, called him a creep, walked away. Part 5. The night the village burned goblins. They poured into the village at night, swarming through the streets, setting fires, turning everything into noise and panic. Ard's father stepped up, holding the line. The mayor fought beside him. But in the chaos, someone shouted, "Ireena is missing!" Everything stopped inside Ard's chest. He'd been chasing her for weeks. He'd made her uncomfortable. He'd pushed her away. And now she was gone. Maybe because of him. Maybe because he'd driven her out into the dark with his inability to exist like a normal person. He didn't hesitate. He launched into the sky. The entire village went silent and looked up. Nobody knew this kid could fly. Part 6. The forest, the goblins, and a promise. Deep in the forest, Ireena was surrounded. Goblins circled her, taunting, laughing, mocking her, hitting every soft spot they'd somehow discovered, every insecurity, every wound, every memory of being different and unwanted and alone. She remembered every time she'd been bullied, every cruel word, every moment of isolation. Her weapon dropped. She stopped fighting. And in that darkness, barely a whisper, she said his name. Ard. The sky cracked open. He descended like a verdict. No hesitation, no fear, just pure, calm, overwhelming power. He looked at the goblins surrounding her and made a decision. One by one, they were erased. Not defeated. Erased, like they'd never existed. The leader stepped forward, gathered his courage, looked Ard in the eye. Ard looked back. The goblin exploded. Apparently, eye contact was lethal. Ard walked to Ireena through the silence and the smoke. She was on the ground, shaking, tears she hadn't meant to cry running down her face. "Why did you save me?" she asked. "I wanted to die." He didn't flinch. He didn't lecture. He sat down and spoke quietly. "I know what it feels like to be completely alone." He got on his knees and he made a promise on his name, on everything he was. "I will never betray a friend again." Ireena looked at him for a long time, then softly, "Promise me you'll always stay by my side." He swore it on the name of Varvatos. And just like that, the most disastrous friendship campaign in history finally had its first win. Part 7. Academy Arc. The plan to be nobody dies immediately. Years passed. They grew up. And Ireena, being Ireena, dragged Ard to a magic academy before he could form a single objection. The headmaster met them at the entrance, saw two children radiating enough power to destabilize a country, and nearly had a spiritual experience. Turns out, Ard's parents were legendary heroes. His bloodline was famous. The whole anonymous background character strategy was already dead before orientation ended. They skipped the physical exam, took the written test. Results came back. Ireena, top of the chart. Ard, zero, dead last. Academic humiliation. Except his answers weren't wrong. They were too advanced. So advanced that the examiner, not recognizing the concepts, marked everything incorrect. The headmaster reviewed it personally, went quiet, and then announced to the entire room that this student had just demonstrated knowledge beyond modern academic standards. The plan was dead, officially buried, and somewhere across the courtyard, a woman with dangerous energy was watching Ard from a distance. Her name was Olivia, one of Varvados's former followers. She recognized something. She didn't know what, but she was going to find out. Part 8. Heraldo, the duel, and Olivia's trap first day of class. A guy named Heraldo was slapping a girl like he owned the building. Ireena stepped in before anyone else moved. Art stepped in right behind her, looked Heraldo dead in the face, and told him that logic, it's a family matter, was complete garbage. That there was no situation, no relationship, no excuse that made hurting someone acceptable. Heraldo responded the only way small men respond to being called out. He challenged Art to a duel. Right on cue, Professor Olivia walked in. The moment Art heard her voice, saw those ears, that outfit, something inside him went cold. She knows me, or she will. She looked at him, tilted her head slightly, said she'd seen him somewhere before. Then she approved the duel, told him to show his power. It was a trap. He knew it was a trap, and he walked into it anyway. On the battlefield, Heraldo summoned a dramatic magic circle like he was the protagonist of his own story. Launched a grand attack. Named it like it was legendary. Art built a wall. Blocked everything. Didn't move. Then he roasted the attack. Scientifically. In front of the entire class. Heraldo threw more fireballs. Named each one. Mega Flare. Ultimate Mega Flare. Each one crashed against Ard's defense like a raindrop on stone. Ard pointed out, calmly, almost bored, that he used to name spells too, back in the day, until he realized it was holding him back. Then he snapped his fingers. Heraldo blinked. His magic, all of it, collapsed, neutralized, gone, like someone had simply turned off a switch. Ard looked at him. That's a real Giga Flare. Remember who the professional is? Heraldo didn't have a response. Nobody did. Olivia watched from the side, expressionless, making notes. Part 9. Jenny, the labyrinth, and magic that shouldn't exist. Team formation week. The entire class swarmed Ard and Ireena like they were free food. But both of them noticed the pink-haired girl sitting alone. No team, no invitation, just quietly invisible in the corner. Ireena walked over, asked her to join. Her name was Jenny, a succubus, and she was quietly grateful in a way that said more than her words did. Their first mission, hunt a black wolf. Simple, clean, collect the hide. Ard found the wolves, looked at them, set them all on fire. The hides were gone. All of them. Ash. Jenny apologized for being useless. Ard offered to train her instead, and for the first time showed genuine, uncomplicated kindness. He demonstrated a technique he'd invented himself, casting magic circles remotely, outside his own body, without using mana as a bridge. "Keep this secret," he said. "Now you try." Jenny focused, extended her hand. A circle formed in the air 10 feet away. Her eyes went wide. Then she tackled him. Before things got stranger, the ground opened up. All three of them fell into a labyrinth. And at the bottom, a minotaur was waiting. Ard held up a single finger as the creature charged. The minotaur's fist connected with that finger and stopped dead, like hitting a mountain. Ard flicked it away. Then he turned to Jenny. "This is your final lesson. Finish it." She hesitated. She'd been running from fights her whole life, waiting to be saved, waiting for someone else to step in. But standing there, looking at the creature, she remembered why she'd started training at all. She didn't run. She gathered everything Ard had taught her, surrounded the Minotaur with remote circles, and ended the fight. When they climbed out of the labyrinth, horns in hand, team intact, something had shifted. Jenny was different, straighter, lighter. Olivia was waiting at the gate. She looked at the technique Jenny had used. She looked at Ard. That casting method, she said slowly, only one person ever used it. The name she didn't say hung in the air like smoke. Art smiled and said nothing. Olivia promised she'd have his answer soon. Part 10. The theatre date, the sewer, and no one ruins my day off. Jenny asked Ard on a date. Ireena immediately invited herself. Jenny suggested a harem. Ireena shut that down before the sentence was finished. At the theatre, Ard ended up watching a film about his own past life, watching a dramatized version of Varvatos' fight on a massive screen, while both girls leaned into him from either side. The movie had also completely rewritten Lydia's personality, turned her from a hardened, relentless warrior into something soft and tragic. Art stared at the screen. That's not her at all. Walking home, they overheard a group in a side alley. Voices low, urgent. Words like queen and assassination and magical sigil. They followed the voices into the sewers, like people with no survival instinct. Inside, a massive magic circle covered the floor. The moment the bandits realized they had company, the leader triggered it. Fire erupting in a ring around Ard. Walls of flame closing in. He walked through them, calmly, steadily, like he was taking a stroll through warm weather. The sigil shattered at his touch. He looked at the assembled bandits. Nobody, he said quietly, ruins my day off. Lightning. Swift. Total. When the dust settled, one man was left standing. The leader, for questioning. The rest were gone. The escaping demon tried to use a child as a hostage. The village froze in panic. Ard looked at the child, looked at the demon. That's an illusion. The demon's last play, exposed in 3 words. Panicking now, the demon hurled a chain lightning attack. Everything he had left, and turned to run. Ard raised his hand. There is no running from this. The flash of Babel activated. A column of light. A sound like the world ending in miniature. The demon ceased to exist. Part 11. The Queen, the Promotion, and Why Art Can't Have Nice Things. The Queen summoned him the next day. She was elegant, composed, the kind of woman who commanded a room without raising her voice. Ireena walked in, looked at her, and said, "Hey, Rosie." The entire court went rigid. The Queen smiled and confirmed. Yes, they were childhood friends. Yes, the disrespect was permitted. Then she looked at Ard and proposed to him, publicly, on her knees, in front of her entire court. Ireena declared ownership immediately. Jenny started calculating harem logistics. The Queen, tired of the chaos she had apparently invited, pivoted. She would promote Ard to Pentagon class instead. Recognition, status, more visibility. Ard, in a desperate bid to stay invisible, asked her to increase the academy's budget instead. She gave him both. He had successfully made himself more famous while trying to disappear. A personal record. Part 12. Sylphie, the Holy Sword, and Lydia's Ghost. She arrived like a storm that hadn't been invited. Sylphie. Silver hair, wild eyes, 3,000 years of training in a dungeon where time moved differently. And somehow still the same impulsive, emotion-driven fighter she'd always been. She was looking for Varvatos' reincarnation. She was looking for the man who, according to a memory she'd been force-fed by a shadowy manipulator, had stood over her sister Lydia and killed her. The moment she saw Ard, something clicked into place. She challenged him to a duel. Olivia approved it immediately. Of course she did. In the arena, Sylphie attacked like she had nothing left to lose. Relentless, furious, sharp. Ard blocked and parried, trying to lose without making it obvious. But she read him perfectly, baited him into a counter, and nearly took his eye. He responded on instinct. Sword up, point at her throat. Olivia called it Ard wins. He realized he'd just been played by the teacher again. Sylphie, still not satisfied, summoned her weapon for a second round. Ard caught the strike barehanded. The magic that radiated from that grip was unmistakable. Olivia stopped the fight. Then, because apparently she resolves conflicts like a supervillain, revealed she'd already poisoned the entire class into unconsciousness. She looked at Sylphie. Lydia would be disappointed in you. That hit different from a sword. Sylphie's anger cracked. Underneath it, grief. Raw, 3,000-year-old grief for a sister she never got to properly mourn. Ireena put a hand on her shoulder. And somehow, in that moment, the girl who'd come to kill Art ended up crying in the arms of the people she'd come to destroy. Part 13. The tournament, the maid cafe, and Olivia's blackmail festival week. The headmaster announced a tournament and, casually as a footnote, mentioned that Olivia had already registered Ard. Ard looked at her. She shrugged and smiled. Win the tournament, or I tell everyone who you really are. Beautiful, efficient, evil. The maid cafe was Jenny's idea. The outfits were Jenny's idea. Everything about it was Jenny's idea, and it showed. The other girls refused until Jenny mentioned they could personally serve Ard. Then everyone agreed immediately. The one brain cell in the group had officially left the chat. In the tournament, Ireena, Jenny, and Sylphie dismantled their opponents with the casual efficiency of people who had vastly better things to do. Ard won his matches too, which only made things worse, because now losing would look suspicious. Jenny faced a giant twice her size and started freezing up. Ard stood in the stands, looked her dead in the eye, and made a promise that will not be repeated here. Jenny won by a significant margin. The final match, Ireena versus Jenny. What followed was less a fight and more a public argument that occasionally involved throwing magic at each other. The core disagreement, who had claim on Ard. The secondary disagreement, who had the better assets. Ireena won. Jenny refused to accept this result. Ard wished he could become invisible. He could not. Part 14. The Tree, the Truth, and Betrayal in the Dark. The night before the play's final act, Sylphie asked Ard to meet her at the Sword King tree after her match. Something in her voice was wrong. Too steady, too resolved. She won her match cold, efficient, instant, and disappeared. That night at the tree, she told him everything. She'd been watching him for weeks. She'd confirmed what she suspected. And now she intended to end it. The tree awakened. From its roots, a holy sword rose. Lydia's sword, the one she had carried into her final battle. The one that had waited 3,000 years to be found. Sylphie raised her weapon. You killed my sister! She lunged, and behind the rage in her eyes, Ard saw something else. A wound. Fresh. Like something had torn it open recently. Someone did this to her. He ran, he dodged, he tried to reach her through the fury, but she was beyond words now. She struck him from behind, and he went down. Standing over him, she waited for relief, for the weight to lift. It didn't. She crumpled, sobbing, because killing Ard hadn't brought Lydia back. Nothing would, and she'd known that the whole time. Then she made a different decision. Destroy everything. Ireena stepped between them. Jenny joined her. Together, they fought to hold Sylphie back and lost. She was too far gone, too powerful, and too broken. She raised her sword for the final blow. Then, Ard's voice. He was back on his feet, fully powered, fully present. And he wasn't running anymore. He moved through her attacks with precision, counting quietly under his breath, waiting. And at exactly the right moment, when her guard broke for just a fraction of a second, he struck. In that instant, Lydia's voice echoed from the blade itself. Sylphie froze. The manipulator in the shadows stepped forward, irritated that his chess piece had failed. He knocked Sylphie aside like she was nothing, useless, and came for Ard himself, twin blades drawn. The sneak attack connected. Ard barely moved. He turned, looked at the blades, looked at the man holding them, then cut off his arm in one motion. The holy sword crackled as the manipulator tried to wield it and rejected him instantly, electricity tearing through him in midair. Ard caught the sword as it fell. Let me show you how to actually hold this. Part 15. Lydia comes home. The sword pulsed with golden light. And then Lydia's voice. Not a memory, not an echo, but her erupted from the blade. She called Ard a dumbass. Her soul slipped free of the sword and floated to Sylphie, who stood there completely unable to speak. Lydia looked at her little sister, 3,000 years older, still somehow exactly the same, and laughed. She told her to stop. Stop blaming Varvatos. Stop living in that one terrible moment. Stop carrying a guilt that was never hers to carry. None of it was his fault, and clinging to the past isn't honoring me. It's wasting the life I wanted you to have. She told her to live, actually live, so that one day they could meet again. Then she returned to the sword, and the light faded. The field was quiet. Sylphie stood in the middle of it, breathing slowly, tears she didn't bother hiding running down her face. For the first time in 3,000 years, the weight was a little lighter. Part 16. 3,000 years back, 2 moons up, a field trip. Cards. Moonlight. Normal for once. Then Ard noticed something on the playing cards. Lydia's face. Verda's face. Legends printed on cardboard like collectibles. The carriage hit a rock. Time stopped. They vanished. When they woke up, there were 2 moons in the sky. Ard looked at them for a long moment. 3,000 years. We're in the past. A boy claiming to be God appeared, casually dropped a mission on them. Someone was destabilizing the timeline, worlds were at risk of erasure, and left before anyone could ask a follow-up question. Classic useless deity behavior. Ard processed this information. Ireena and Ginny clung to him like the world was ending. He gently detached them and looked up at both moons. We need to find Varvatos, my past self. Part 17. Lydia, alive and absolutely unhinged. She had the same silver in her hair, the same fire in her eyes, a sword at her hip, and absolutely zero patience for anything resembling caution. Lydia, living, breathing, 3,000 years younger than the grave Ard had stood over. He froze the moment he saw her. The girls admired her for approximately 2 seconds before her personality revealed itself. Loud, aggressive, immediately distracted by Jenny's assets, launching into behavior that Ard shut down by stepping between them and telling her she was committing a war crime. She challenged him to a duel. He accepted. What followed was not a sparring session. It was a street fight between two people who had clearly forgotten the definition of restraint. Lydia threw punches, kicks, sand in his face, a full body tackle. She fought dirty in every possible way and looked entirely comfortable doing it. Ard matched her, stumbled, got back up, hit back. They went for hours, and when they finally collapsed side by side, both of them breathing hard, Lydia looked sideways at him and said, "You lasted longer than I expected." "Your fighting style is still ridiculous," Ard replied. She laughed, and Ard felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. The particular warmth of someone who felt familiar in a way that had nothing to do with logic. He'd missed her. He hadn't even let himself know how much until right now. She patted his head without a word. He didn't say anything either. Part 18. The Cursed King, the Battlefield, and a Name He Dreaded. The war was real and it was brutal. Lydia led the charge. Sylphie, younger, just as reckless, tore through the front lines. Ginny worked with the healers in the rear, and Ard watched from above as the enemy general slipped through the chaos, bypassing the fighting entirely, targeting supplies. Classic, Ard thought, and predictable. He set the trap. When the general stepped into position, the array activated. a concentrated beam of energy that left nothing standing. Lydia rode back through the smoke and announced the enemy captain was now Ash. The castle lay ahead. Ard looked at the gates of his old home, the fortress he'd built with his own power in another life, and said nothing. Inside, on the throne, sat Varvatos, his past self, the man he used to be. He looked at him across the hall and felt the most unusual emotion he'd ever experienced: second-hand embarrassment. Not for Varvatos, who radiated final boss energy with casual precision, but for himself, for standing in the shadow of who he once was and realizing he'd been running from it for a decade. Ireena thought Varvatos was the most handsome thing she'd ever seen. Jenny wished for things that will not be documented here. Art pretended not to know them. Part 19. A visitor from the future. A war he never wanted. Then the demon lord appeared. Not during the battle, not on the field. Quietly, personally, standing in front of Ard alone. He removed his mask, and Ard was looking at himself. Not a twin, not a coincidence. Him, another version of Ard Meteor, decades further down a road that had gone very, very wrong. A man who had reincarnated, found Ireena and Ginny and something like peace, and then watched it all shatter again. A man who had lost everything twice. He'd become the demon lord to get Lydia back. Full stop. Not the world, not history, just her. Join me, his future self said. We can fix it. Ard was quiet for a long moment. He thought of Ireena. He thought of Ginny. He thought of every promise he'd made and every person who had believed in him because of them. Then he thought of Lydia. Not the Lydia he wanted to save, but the Lydia who had stood in a ruined village full of spirits and told him quietly, "This is the fate I chose." "No," Ard said. His future self studied him, then nodded slowly. "You have 3 days." Part 20. Lydia's Sin. Found her sitting outside, staring at nothing. She dragged him into town anyway. Made him eat. Made him walk. Acted like a menace. Flirting randomly, picking fights for no reason, getting into a public brawl with him when he called her an idiot. When the dust settled, she looked at him. "Something's bothering you. What is it?" He asked her something he'd been circling for days. What would you do if you had to sacrifice the thing you cared about most? She didn't answer. She took him somewhere instead. A ruined village, overgrown, silent, and full of spirits. Alien civilians, women, and children, all screaming at her, blaming her. She had wiped them out during a wartime operation. She had made a choice and people died for it. She told him she already knew what she was. "I'm a monster. I've known for a long time. My fate is to keep fighting until all enemies are gone. And then die alone. That's my punishment." She said it without drama, without self-pity, like someone reading from a plan they'd accepted long ago. "Don't try to change my ending," she told him. "I'm not worth saving." She patted his head one last time. That night, she came back to the house and hugged Ireena and Ginny and gave them hairpin gifts and suggested they all have a drink before the final battle. Just like that. Zero transition. As if the weight of everything she carried could be set down for a few hours if she just refused to let it show. Part 21. The final battle and a future that has to end. The war erupted on every front simultaneously. Verda's war machines cracked the earth. Olivia's beast army flooded the flanks. Dragons screamed overhead. The demon lord's forces pushed forward without end, without fear, without hesitation. On the battlefield, Ard's future self appeared. "Last chance," he said. "No," Ard said again. They clashed. Two versions of the same man, the same power, the same history, the same grief, trying to cancel each other out. Every spell reflected, every technique countered, a perfect, exhausting stalemate. Then the future version smiled. "I predicted this." Inside the castle, Ireena and Ginny had found the demon lord's soul crystal, the source of his immortality. But Latima, the maid who had served them faithfully for weeks, stepped out of the shadows and revealed her true face. She wasn't theirs, she was his. She had always been his. She summoned the monsters, hundreds of them, filling every corridor. Then Lydia dropped from the ceiling like a falling star. The hairpins, the ones she'd given them as goodbye gifts, had been trackers. She'd known. She'd planned for this the entire time. She dismantled the monsters in seconds, knocked Latima out, turned to the girls, and told them the truth. She had known for a long time how this ended. She had chosen it. Not because she had no other option, but because it was the world she wanted to create. A world where people could actually smile, where her sacrifice meant something more than herself. She put her hand on the crystal. This is the fate I chose. She destroyed it. The demon lord's immortality shattered. Back on the battlefield, the future Ard felt it instantly. The moment the foundation of his plan crumbled, he looked at Ard. Join me, please. And Ard finally looked at him with something like clarity. You're not trying to save Lydia. You're running from guilt. You never once asked what she actually wanted. The future version screamed, all of his power, all of his grief, unleashed at once. I know what she wanted. I know. But I wanted to be selfish just this once, just this one time. I wanted to live forever with her. He charged. They collided in a final strike, both blades crossing in the air above the burning battlefield. A light stopped the future version's sword. Lydia's presence, her choice, radiating outward from the crystal she'd just destroyed. Ard looked at his future self. It's over. The strike landed. The future version of Ard Meteor dissolved into golden light. His last words were not anger, not accusation, just memory. Lydia's laugh, her stubbornness, her hand on his head. I loved her, he said simply. And then he was gone. Part 22. What Lydia left behind. The light faded. Back in the past, Lydia stood in the quiet aftermath and asked Ireena and Ginny one question. The future. Is it a world where people can smile? They hesitated. They thought of everything. The chaos, the fights, the losses, the friendships that somehow survived all of it. Yes, Ireena said. Lydia nodded. Good. She hugged them both. Long, like she was memorizing it. Tell Ard something for me. And then she was gone. Varvatos stood outside his castle and announced the victory. He gave credit to one name, Ard Meteor. In the space between worlds, the godchild appeared one last time, satisfied with the outcome, ready to send them home. Ard looked at him. I never want to see you again. Agreed, said God. Epilogue. Back to the present, forward from here. He woke up staring at the ceiling, then staring at Sophie's completely flat chest directly in front of his face because the universe had decided this was the appropriate welcome home. Olivia apologized for the view, almost seemed to mean it. They were at the ruins of Olivia's old home. 3,000 years of history reduced to stone and memory. Ireena sat down beside him. Lydia left you a message. He went still. And then, quiet, translucent, barely there, Lydia's spirit appeared one last time. She didn't speak. She looked at him, smiled. The same smile she'd had when she patted his head before a battle she knew she wouldn't survive. Then she raised one hand and gently pushed him forward. Keep going. The light faded. He sat there for a long moment. Then he stood up. Ireena was waiting. Ginny was waiting. Sylphie, annoying, flat-bored, genuinely trying her best, was waiting. And for the first time since he'd reincarnated, the quiet he'd wanted didn't feel like hiding. It felt like something worth protecting. If you made it to the end, you didn't just watch a recap. You survived it. Welcome to the inner circle. Comment Code Sigma if you knew Ard was going to fight himself and still come out looking like the final boss of his own story.